Left-handed people, what in the world just doesn't work properly for you? I didn't see anyone mention this one yet. Brooms, where the stick screws into the brush part. The way I naturally grip a broom and sweep causes it to gradually unscrew itself until the brush part falls off, so I have to swap which hand is on top and my entire stance, so my sweeping motion will constantly screw the stick and brush tighter together instead. It's easily manageable, but sometimes at the end of a long day of work you're tired, sweeping up and not thinking about having to do it opposite, the broom detaches. That's a relatable issue. I get it, it's annoying when that happens. I remember a buddy of mine had the same problem with his broom. He'd be halfway through sweeping and suddenly the brush would just drop. It's one of those moments where you just stand there for a second, kind of confused. Swapping hands and stances during a chore can feel weird, especially after a long day. Got to find a better broom, I guess. Fountain pens. Any kind of wet ink, especially on shiny paper, greetings cards end up looking like someone smeared multiple spiders inside. Those chairs you get with a mini desk on one side. Made university lectures a real pain. I remember using a fountain pen for the first time. The ink would sometimes blob out, and my notes looked like a mess. In class, those mini desk chairs were terrible. Couldn't concentrate with everyone struggling to fit. The struggle was real, just trying to take notes without getting ink everywhere or wrestling with that awkward setup. It was all part of the university experience, I guess. Spiral-bound notebooks. Can openers. Lead pencils and certain gel pens smudge as you write. Certain computer mice, if you're like me and only want to use one left-handed, thank God for left-handed gaming mice. I remember in school, always carrying a spiral-bound notebook. It was my go-to for notes. I had a favorite lead pencil that smudged a lot. I never really cared for gel pens, the smudge drove me crazy. And yeah, I get it about the mice too. Being left-handed is tough sometimes. I eventually found a good gaming mouse that worked well for me, and that made things easier. I assume, like myself, that most lefties just adapt to things by being semi-ambidextrous. Scissors, can openers, PC mice that are on the right-hand side and which I have never bothered to switch. You can just train yourself to use a non-dominant hand until it becomes better at particular things. I get that. I'm right-hand but learn to do some stuff with my left. Opening jars and using tools can be a challenge, but it makes you more versatile. I remember trying to write with my left hand for fun. It was messy, but there was something satisfying about it. Just goes to show, you can adapt and find a way around things if you really want to. Pens. They're made to be dragged along paper, not pushed, so a lot of pens just write like shit for us. That said, the day I learned intubation and found out that a laryngoscope blade is meant to be held in the left hand, I rejoiced. Suck it, righties. I win this one. It's funny how simple things like pens can feel like a daily struggle. I remember trying to take notes in class with a stubborn pen that just wouldn't cooperate. Then there was that moment in nursing school when we got to practice intubation. Holding the laryngoscope just right felt satisfying after all those awkward pen moments. It was nice to finally have something work out in my favor, even if it's a small win. The alphabet. Not writing itself, I just angle the paper so as not to smudge, but the letters themselves, the shape of them flows nicely when pulled smoothly across the page with a pen, but us lefties have to push the nib across the page. Try drawing a line, pulling a pen, and then pushing it to feel the difference in smoothness. Also mugs with logos on one side that are not visible when used in the left hand. Or sight sign-in books in narrow spaces in doorways, with a pen on the wrong side, oddly common. Rulers with the numbers on the wrong side. I get where you're coming from. Being left-handed can be a hassle. I remember trying to write in school and constantly smudging my work. It was just awkward. Friends didn't really get it when I complained about left-handed scissors or that one time we had to sign in at a narrow door. It seems like everything is set up for right-hand people, and we just have to deal with it. For all the firearm enthusiasts out there, finding a left-handed bolt-action rifle can be a pain in the ass. Most often I can only find the models I want set up for right hand, which makes pulling the bolt back very awkward. I get that. It can be frustrating when you're looking for specific gear and it just doesn't exist in your preferred setup. I once had a similar issue while searching for a left-handed fishing rod. Took ages to find one that felt right. Sometimes you just want things to be simple, but it seems like the market doesn't always agree. It's all about that personal comfort, I guess. At work, I have to swipe in with a badge. I have the badge on the left side of my pants because that's where my left hand can grab it. I have to reach across and occasionally reposition myself because all the readers are on the right side of the users. Fingerprint sensors on the laptop, right-hand side. As is they num block. Ignition in the car? I get it. It's all about that awkward reach. You know, having to adjust just to get things done. Sometimes I think we overcomplicate simple tasks. Why can't everything just be where it's supposed to be? Cars, laptops, work badges, it feels like a layout challenge. Just seems like it could be easier. But then, I guess if everything was perfect, we wouldn't have stories to tell, right? Emergency stops on large industrial equipment. Most of these are placed so that if there is an accident and you are being pulled into a machine, the e-stop is located wherever a right-handed person would instinctively reach as they were trying not to die. As a left-handed person, this means they are never located where I need them to be. This is a common enough issue that left-handed people are significantly more likely to die or suffer disabling injury in industrial accidents than right-handed people. Most safety features are just not designed for lefties. Most large power tools are not designed for lefties at all. That's an interesting point. I never really thought about how many things are designed with right-hand people in mind. Makes you realize that safety features should be more inclusive. It's wild to think that something as simple as the placement of an emergency stop can make such a big difference. Just goes to show that a little awareness could help a lot of people in those situations. Most multi-tools, the easy one-handed knife opening is for righties, many edged knives don't allow switching the pocket clips, and same for knife sheaths. I have 5 pairs of left-handed scissors for a reason. When I used a left-handed can opener it made me cry, I had no idea how easy it was. I'm sure there are a ton of other ones, but I can't think of them or don't even realize I'm struggling. There's a reason left-handed people don't live as long, we aren't meant for this world. Edited for clarification and grammar. I get it. Being left-handed can be a hassle. My friend had a tough time with scissors and kitchen tools. He always had to buy special ones made for lefties. One day, he tried a left-handed can opener and was amazed. It was like a simple task became a breeze. I guess we often overlook the little struggles until something shines a light on them. It's a real reminder to appreciate the small stuff. Learning guitar. I play a right-handed guitar flipped the other way, so the strings are backwards, but to me it's normal. Also 3-ring binders and writing anything because you immediately smudge it. So it's extra fun when it needs to be nice, like on a greeting card. Cake knife server things, the serrated edge is on the other side. That's an interesting approach to guitar. Flipping it around must be tricky, but I get the vibe of making it your own. Those binders sound like a struggle. It's kind of funny how little things, like writing on a greeting card, can turn into a challenge too. And yeah, using a cake server the wrong way sounds like a recipe for disaster. You've turned some everyday stuff into unique little quirks. Niche 1, but petrol leaf blowers. The intake is on the right side of all of them, so if you hold it with your left it sucks your pants in. It's the same with drills. To put them into reverse, most have a button you push from left to right, and to drill into things you push it right to left. So if you're drilling into things and have to apply some force with your right hand, you push into that button. But if you do the same thing with your left hand, you have to hold the drill differently because you can easily put it into reverse unintentionally when trying to use force. I've definitely had my fair share of awkward moments with tools. I remember using a leaf blower and somehow ended up with my pants getting sucked in. It was pretty embarrassing. Then there's drilling, where you're trying to focus but keep hitting the reverse button when you don't mean to. It's such a hassle. Makes you think about how they designed these things. You need to be a bit careful. Surgical equipment, surgical scissors, laparoscopic tools, it's the scissor problem but x10. They locked-unlock with a thumb-pulling motion for righties but an awkward thumb-pushing motion for lefties. The scissors need to be squeezed by a lefty to keep the blades together while you cut. And you operate on the opposite side as righties, which trips up the second surgeon in the room. That sounds pretty frustrating. I've had a friend who's left-handed and struggled with tools designed for right-hand people. It's like every time they try to do something simple, it just doesn't work right. They always have to adapt, and it can mess with their flow, especially in high-stress situations. Just goes to show how small design details can really impact someone's performance in tough scenarios. I struggle with directions. Meaning if my wife tells me to turn left or right, I have to think about it. I think this is because growing up and playing sports, I always automatically converted the verbal instructions in my head. Example: throwing a ball. Raise your left arm to point and then throw with your right arm would become raise my right arm and throw with the left. I get that. Directions can be tricky sometimes. I had a friend who was the same way. Whenever we went out, I had to remind him a few times about left and right. He'd mix them up all the time. It was funny, though, because it became a running joke. One time, we ended up taking a longer route just because he didn't want to admit he got it wrong again. Eating at a table next to somebody right-hand. As a lefty, you get used to keeping your elbow tucked in and down to prevent hitting the person sitting to the left. Right-hand eaters, not all, just let that chicken wing flap. Yeah, I get that. Being left-handed at a table can be awkward. I've had my share of elbow clashes. It's funny how right-hand folks sometimes have no clue. You almost get into a rhythm of dodging their flares. Makes eating out feel like a dance, trying not to bump elbows while enjoying the food. Just a little issue, but you learn to adapt. I'm not ambidextrous by any means, but for some reason I'm able to use a lot of right-handed things. It's great for computers as I can use a mouse right-handed and make notes with my left. The only things I have to do left-handed is write or paint, even DIY, can't get brush to sit right in my hand. Scissors, tin openers, cutlery all fine. But likely because my parents are right-handed and never set anything out differently. It's interesting how that works. Growing up in a right-hand environment really shapes what you're comfortable with. I can relate to using different hands for different tasks. I can't really use tools left-handed either, it just feels off. It's almost like your brain adapts to what you're exposed to. Makes you wonder how much of our skills are just learned habits. This is a weird one that I've never seen mentioned in these threads before, but it was just bugging me a few minutes ago. I often have to write things down on paper while sitting in a vehicle in the pre-dawn hour of the day. With no ambient light, I have to turn on the overhead light inside my truck. which is over the dashboard. So when I turn to my right in order to use my left hand to write on my paper against the top of the center console, my arm ends up casting a shadow on my paper and I can hardly see what I'm writing. If I were using my right hand to write, my arm would be on the far side of the paper from the light and I could actually see what I'm writing. I get that. It's annoying when simple things like writing become a challenge. I often find myself in similar situations, trying to navigate the awkward angles in a small space. Sometimes, I'll just give up on writing and use my phone to jot down notes. It's easier than dealing with shadows. But yeah, those little inconveniences can mess with you, especially when you're just trying to get stuff done in the early hours. I've adapted to most things, but I dislike when things are pointlessly handed. I have several cooking utensils where the combination of a shaped handle and the shape of the utensil marks them as clearly meant to be held in the right hand. To use them in the left hand, I have to hold them in the less comfortable way because now the shape of the handle doesn't fit my hand. It bugs me because this shaping doesn't add anything, and making a symmetrical handle would probably be easier. It's like they went out of their way to annoy lefties. I get what you're saying. It's annoying when things aren't made with everyone in mind. I remember my friend who's left-handed dealt with similar issues. He had to twist and turn things just to make them work. It shouldn't be that difficult. Sometimes it feels like they just don't consider how everyone uses stuff. A bit more thought could go a long way. Most decks of regular playing cards have the number letter in the upper corner that is hidden when I fold it out. So it is either see just a bunch of white cards, or hold it in an awkward reversed fan style. I remember trying to show a trick with cards to a friend. I fanned them out and realized nobody could see the numbers. It felt kind of silly holding them weirdly. We ended up laughing about how cards just don't work for showing off tricks, and we just played a simple game instead. Sometimes keeping it casual is way more fun than showing off. Maybe a bit off topic, but I'll continue anyway. My dad came from a large family and I have 31st cousins. I have 2 sisters, 8 nieces and nephews, 20 great-nieces and nephews, so far 6 great-greats. I'm the only lefty. It's referred to often. You? I get that. My family isn't as big, but I do have a few cousins. Being the only lefty in a big family must be interesting. My aunt always comments on it, too. It's funny how little things like that stick out. It kind of makes you feel special, right? I guess we all have our quirks that set us apart. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.